The grand throne room of the Zephyrian Empire stretched before Ambassador Sarah Chun like a cathedral of crystalline beauty. Towering spires of bioluminescent coral reached toward the vaulted ceiling, their soft purple glow casting dancing shadows across the assembled crowd of alien dignitaries. The air hummed with tension thick enough to cut with a blade. Sarah adjusted her diplomatic uniform, the simple navy blue fabric looking almost primitive against the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor of the gathered representatives. 23 species had come to witness this moment, each one more advanced than humanity in their own way. The Carathians, with their chrome exoskeletons, gleamed like living machines. The ethereal Valians floated in their transparent biosuits, their gaseous forms barely contained. Even the youngest species present, the lizard-like Saurians, had achieved faster-than-light travel 3,000 years before humans had figured out agriculture. At the center of it all sat Queen Viroleth, her serpentine form coiled upon the throne of stars. Her scales shifted from deep emerald to brilliant gold as emotions played across her features. 6 arms moved with fluid grace as she gestured, each adorned with rings of power that could level mountains. Her voice, when she spoke, carried the weight of 10,000 years of civilization. Representatives of the Galactic Council, she began, her words translated instantly into dozens of languages by the neural implants each diplomat wore. Today we address the situation regarding the newcomer species that calls itself humanity. Sarah felt every eye in the chamber turned toward her. Some gazes held curiosity, others barely concealed disgust. The humans had been in space for less than 2 centuries, a blink of an eye compared to the ancient civilizations surrounding her. They had stumbled into the galactic community like children wandering into a symposium of philosophers, clutching their crude fusion drives and primitive AI systems. The question before us, Queen Viroleth continued, is whether these humans deserve a voice in galactic affairs, or if they should be classified as a protected species until they mature sufficiently. Ambassador Thexnai of the Carathians stepped forward, his mechanical voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. Your Majesty, with respect, the humans have demonstrated nothing but aggressive expansion and technological theft since their arrival. They lack the wisdom that comes with millennia of development. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Sarah had expected this. Humanity's rapid technological advancement had made many species nervous. In just 50 years of galactic contact, humans had reverse-engineered technologies that had taken other species centuries to develop. Their adaptability was seen as threatening rather than impressive. Furthermore, Thexnai continued, their military capabilities are concerning. They wage war with a ferocity that suggests they have not evolved beyond their primitive aggressive instincts. The Valian's representative, a shimmering cloud named Whisper of Dawn, spoke next. Their voice sounded like wind through crystal caves. The humans also lack proper respect for ancient protocols. They refuse to acknowledge the superiority of established civilizations. Sarah felt her jaw tighten, but maintained her diplomatic composure. She had been chosen for this role precisely because of her ability to remain calm under pressure. Years of negotiating with various alien species had taught her that showing emotion was often seen as weakness. Your Majesty, Sarah said, stepping forward when the Queen gestured for her to speak. Humanity requests the opportunity to prove our worth to this council. We may be young, but we have much to offer. A sound that might have been laughter came from the direction of the Saurian delegation. General Krothtar's reptilian features showed clear amusement. And what exactly could a species barely out of its home system offer to civilizations that have existed since before your star was born? Sarah had prepared for this question, but the condescending tone still stung. Innovation, Your Majesty. Fresh perspectives. The ability to find new solutions to old problems. Examples would be helpful, Queen Viroleth said, her voice carefully neutral. Sarah took a deep breath. This was the moment she had trained for her entire diplomatic career. In the past year alone, Human scientists have developed a new form of quantum encryption that your own tech specialist said was theoretically impossible. Our engineers created a more efficient fusion reactor design that increased energy output by 30% over existing models. Our military tacticians, yes, the military prowess, interrupted Ambassador Telquan of the ancient ethereal collective. The being's form was barely visible, existing partially in dimensions humans couldn't perceive. We have observed your species' capacity for violence. It is disturbing. Every species here has fought wars, Sarah replied. The difference, Telquan cut her off, is that we learn to move beyond such primitive instincts. Your people seem to revel in conflict. Sarah felt the weight of centuries of prejudice pressing down on her. These ancient civilizations looked at humanity and saw barbarians with starships, too dangerous to ignore, but too primitive to respect. The irony wasn't lost on her that many of these same species had expanded their empires through conquest, but time had apparently made them forget their own violent origins. Queen Viroleth raised one of her arms for silence. The concern is not without merit. In the Androxa incident, human forces destroyed an entire pirate legion using tactics that were unprecedented in their brutality. The chamber fell silent as the memory of that battle hung in the air. Sarah remembered the reports. A human colony ship had been attacked by the Androxa Pirate Legion, one of the most feared criminal organizations in the galaxy. The pirates had captured over 1,000 human civilians and were demanding ransom. Every other species had advised negotiation, as was the civilized way. Instead, humanity had sent the starship Defiance. Captain Marcus Webb had used a combination of psychological warfare, tactical deception, and pure audacity that had left the galactic community stunned. He had convinced the pirates that the human fleet was willing to sacrifice their own civilians rather than negotiate, then used their momentary confusion to launch a surgical strike that eliminated the entire pirate operation without harming a single hostage. It was brilliant, it was effective, and it terrified every other species in the galaxy. The Androxa had terrorized shipping lanes for 3 centuries, Sarah said carefully. No one else had been able to stop them. Because we chose diplomatic solutions, Ambassador Thexnai replied coldly. Violence should be the last resort of intelligent beings. And sometimes, Sarah said, feeling her diplomatic training warring with her human instincts, the last resort is the only resort that works. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Sarah realized she had made a mistake. In trying to defend humanity's actions, she had reinforced every negative stereotype these aliens held about her species. Queen Viroleth's scales shifted to a deeper shade of red. This is precisely the attitude that concerns us, Ambassador Chun. Your species seems to view violence as an acceptable solution to complex problems. With respect, Your Majesty, Sarah said, knowing she was walking on dangerous ground, I would argue that our approach to the Androxa situation saved lives. How many more ships would they have attacked? How many more civilians would have died while the galaxy debated diplomatic solutions? The silence that followed her words was deafening. Sarah could feel the disapproval radiating from every corner of the chamber. She had just challenged the fundamental philosophy that held galactic civilization together, the belief that wisdom and patience could solve any problem given enough time. Whisper of Dawn's ethereal form flickered with agitation. This is exactly what we mean. Humans lack the patience for true wisdom. You seek quick solutions to complex problems, often leaving a trail of destruction in your wake. General Krothtar nodded his massive reptilian head. In our dealings with human traders, we have observed this pattern repeatedly. They are impatient, demanding. They want results immediately rather than allowing proper processes to unfold. Sarah felt a flash of anger, but forced it down. Perhaps what you see as impatience, we see as efficiency. While other species spent decades debating whether to intervene in the Kepler crisis, human relief ships were already delivering aid to the survivors. Without proper authorization, Ambassador Telquan pointed out, without following established protocols. Your ships simply appeared in Kepler space and began operations without consulting local authorities. Because people were dying, Sarah said, her voice rising slightly before she caught herself. Every day of delay meant more casualties. Queen Viroleth leaned forward on her throne, her multiple eyes fixing on Sarah with unsettling intensity. And this is the crux of the matter, is it not? Humanity believes that good intentions justify bypassing established order. You act first and ask for forgiveness later. The accusation hung in the air like a physical weight. Sarah realized that this was about more than just humanity's application for council membership. This was a trial of human nature itself, and she was the only defender her species had. Your Majesty, Sarah said, choosing her words carefully, I would argue that sometimes good intentions combined with decisive action achieve better results than perfect protocols followed too slowly. The people of Kepler are alive today because humans acted quickly, and the Hesperian trade war started because humans refused to follow proper commercial protocols. General Crothtar countered. Your impatience has consequences. Sarah felt the discussion slipping away from her. Every example of human achievement was being countered with examples of human problems. The narrative being constructed was of a species too young and reckless to be trusted with galactic responsibility. I notice, Sarah said, trying a different approach, that all of your concerns center around our supposed immaturity and aggression. But has anyone asked what the galaxy gains by keeping humanity on the sidelines? The question seemed to catch the assembly off guard. Queen Viroleth tilted her massive head, scales shifting to a curious shade of blue. Explain. Sarah took a steadying breath. This was her chance to change the direction of the conversation. Your Majesty, the galaxy faces challenges that have persisted for millennia precisely because they have been approached the same way by the same ancient civilizations. The Void Plague has resisted treatment for 5,000 years. The energy crisis in the Outer Rim continues despite centuries of research. The dark matter pirates operate with impunity because no one has found an effective counter-strategy. She paused, watching the faces around her for any sign that her words were having an effect. What if our supposed recklessness is actually the key to solving these problems? What if our impatience is exactly what's needed to break through obstacles that patience hasn't been able to overcome? Ambassador Thexnai's mechanical voice carried a note of skepticism. You suggest that inexperience is an advantage? I suggest that fresh perspectives often reveal solutions that experience has overlooked, Sarah replied. Human scientists have already made breakthroughs in quantum mechanics that your researchers said were impossible. Our approach to biological systems has revolutionized medical treatment. Our military strategies, while controversial, have proven effective against threats that conventional approaches couldn't handle. For the first time since the hearing began, Sarah sensed a shift in the atmosphere. Several delegates exchanged glances, and she caught sight of what might have been thoughtful expressions on some of the alien faces. Whisper of Dawn's form flickered uncertainly. Even if we accept that humanity brings unique capabilities to the galaxy, the question remains whether these are outweighed by the risks your species poses. What risk specifically? Sarah asked. The risk that we might solve problems too quickly? The risk that we might save lives without proper authorization? The risk that we might defend ourselves effectively when attacked? The chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices as delegates began speaking over each other. Sarah realized she had struck a nerve by directly challenging the assumptions underlying their concerns. The ancient civilizations weren't just worried about human recklessness. They were worried about human effectiveness. Queen Viroletha's commanding voice cut through the noise. Silence. The word echoed off the crystalline walls with such force that several smaller delegates visibly flinched. Ambassador Chen raises interesting points. Perhaps we should examine specific examples of human contribution to galactic welfare. Sarah felt a surge of hope. Finally, she would have a chance to present humanity's achievements without immediately having them dismissed as dangerous aberrations. The Martian terraforming project, she began, has developed techniques that could be applied to dozens of dead worlds throughout the galaxy. Human innovation has created new possibilities for expansion and colonization that could benefit every species here. General Krothtar made a dismissive gesture. Terraforming is not new technology. My people have been shaping worlds for millennia. Yes, Sarah interrupted, immediately regretting her rudeness but pressing on. But your techniques take centuries and require massive resource expenditure. Human methods can accomplish the same results in decades using a fraction of the materials. The silence that followed was different from before. Instead of disapproval, Sarah sensed calculation. These were civilizations that had been struggling with the same problems for thousands of years, and suddenly, someone was claiming to have better solutions. Ambassador Telquan's ethereal form seemed to solidify slightly. These are significant claims. Do you have documentation to support them? Sarah activated her personal data pad, projecting holographic displays into the center of the chamber. Charts and technical specifications filled the air, showing efficiency comparisons and resource utilization rates. The numbers were undeniable. Human innovation was achieving results that impressed even these ancient civilizations. Furthermore, Sarah continued, feeling momentum building, human cultural adaptability has allowed us to serve as effective intermediaries between species that have been unable to communicate effectively for centuries. We've facilitated trade agreements and cultural exchanges that have benefited entire regions of the galaxy. Queen Viraleth studied the floating data with all 6 of her eyes. These achievements are noteworthy, but they do not address the fundamental concern about human unpredictability. Sarah nodded. Your Majesty, I understand that our approach seems chaotic compared to established civilizations. But perhaps what you see as unpredictability, we see as adaptability. The galaxy is facing new challenges that require new solutions. Climate change on a galactic scale, emerging technologies that threaten established order, contact with entities from outside our local group. These problems can't be solved with the same thinking that created them. The chamber fell into contemplative silence. Sarah could see delegates processing her words, weighing human potential against human risks. She had made her case as effectively as she could. Now came the moment of judgment that would determine humanity's place in galactic civilization. Queen Viraleth rose from her throne, her serpentine form uncoiling to its full impressive height. The arguments presented today have given us much to consider. The question before us is not merely whether humanity deserves a voice in galactic affairs, but whether the galaxy can afford to continue excluding potentially valuable perspectives simply because they challenge our established norms. Sarah felt her heart racing as the Queen prepared to render judgment. The fate of her entire species hung in the balance, dependent on the wisdom of an alien ruler whose thought processes she could barely comprehend. We shall adjourn for deliberation, the Queen announced. The Council will reconvene tomorrow to render final judgment on humanity's petition for membership. As the assembly began to disperse, Sarah remained standing in the center of the chamber, feeling suddenly very small and very alone. She had done everything she could, but would it be enough? Tomorrow would bring either humanity's acceptance into galactic civilization or their relegation to the status of a protected species, watched and managed by their betters. The weight of an entire world's hopes pressed down on her shoulders as she prepared for the longest night of her life. Sarah Chun barely slept that night in her assigned quarters aboard the diplomatic station. The room was luxurious by any standard, with walls that displayed peaceful scenes from a dozen different worlds and a gravity system that could be adjusted to accommodate any species' needs. But comfort meant nothing when the future of humanity hung in the balance. She spent hours reviewing her presentation, wondering if there was something more she could have said, some argument she had missed. The faces of the council members played through her mind on repeat, some showing curiosity, others thinly veiled hostility. Queen Viroleth's expression had been unreadable, her alien features giving no hint of her thoughts. When morning came, Sarah dressed with the careful precision of a soldier preparing for battle. Her diplomatic uniform had been cleaned and pressed to perfection. She wore minimal jewelry, just a small earth pin on her collar and her grandmother's watch, a reminder of the world and people counting on her. The throne room was even more crowded when she returned. Word of the proceedings had spread throughout the station, and representatives from dozens of species had come to witness the historic decision. Sarah noticed several new faces among the observers, scientists, military leaders, and what appeared to be media correspondents from various worlds. Queen Viroleth entered with even greater ceremony than the previous day. Her scales had shifted to a deep purple that Sarah's briefings had told her indicated serious contemplation. The 6 arms moved in complex patterns that conveyed formal authority to those who could read Zephyrian body language. Representatives of the Galactic Council, the Queen began, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. We have spent the night in deliberation over the matter of human membership. The arguments presented yesterday were illuminating. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. The formal tone gave no hint of which direction the decision would go. The Council acknowledges the achievements Ambassador Chun has presented, the Queen continued. Human innovation in terraforming, medical technology, and energy production shows promise. Their success in resolving certain conflicts that had proven intractable to conventional diplomacy is noted. A murmur ran through the assembly. Sarah caught what sounded like approval from some quarters, though others remained silent. However, Queen Viroleth said, and Sarah felt her heart sink, concerns remain about humanity's long-term stability as a galactic partner. The question is not merely what humans can contribute, but whether they can do so without destabilizing the careful balance that has maintained galactic peace for millennia. Ambassador Thexnai stepped forward. Your Majesty, the Carathian delegation has prepared additional evidence regarding human unpredictability that we believe the Council should consider before making its final decision. Sarah fought to keep her expression neutral. She had hoped the deliberations were over, but apparently her opponents had spent the night preparing new attacks on humanity's character. Proceed, the Queen said, though Sarah thought she detected a note of reluctance in the alien ruler's voice. Thexnai activated his own data display, filling the air with tactical readouts and incident reports. These records show 17 separate occasions in the past 5 years where human forces have acted without proper authorization from galactic authorities. In each case, they claimed emergency circumstances justified their actions. The data scrolled past Sarah's vision faster than she could analyze it, but she recognized several of the incidents. The evacuation of New Shanghai Colony when volcanic activity threatened the population. The intervention in the vegan system when pirates had taken hostages. The medical relief mission to Rigel 4 during the plague outbreak. In every case, Thexnai continued, other species offered to provide assistance through proper channels. Humanity chose to act unilaterally instead of waiting for coordinated galactic response. Sarah felt the mood in the chamber shift against her once again. The Carathian was painting human initiative as reckless disregard for authority, and several delegates were nodding in agreement. Furthermore, Thexnai said, human military doctrine explicitly includes what they call acceptable losses in their strategic planning. They are willing to sacrifice their own people to achieve objectives, a mindset that other species find deeply disturbing. The accusation hit Sarah like a physical blow. It was true that human military thinking included calculations about casualties, but every species made similar judgments. The difference was that humans were more honest about the realities of conflict. Your Majesty, Sarah said, standing to respond, I would like to address these accusations. Queen Viroleth gestured for her to proceed. The incident's ambassador, Thexnai, has cited all had one thing in common: immediate danger to civilian populations. While other species debated proper procedures, people were dying. Humanity acted because we believed that saving lives was more important than following protocol. And therein lies the problem, said Whisper of Dawn, their ethereal form flickering with agitation. Humans consistently place their own judgment above established galactic authority. This attitude suggests they would be unreliable council members. Sarah felt frustration building inside her. With respect, established galactic authority has allowed the Void Plague to spread unchecked for 5,000 years. It has failed to eliminate piracy in the outer systems. It has permitted the energy crisis to worsen for centuries. Perhaps the problem isn't human disregard for authority, but authority's disregard for results. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Sarah realized she had crossed a line by directly criticizing the council's effectiveness, but she was tired of defending human virtues as if they were character flaws. General Crothtar's reptilian roar cut through the noise. You see, this is exactly the arrogance we warn against. Barely 2 centuries in space, and already they presume to lecture civilizations that existed before their son was born. Knowledge isn't measured in years, Sarah shot back, her diplomatic training finally giving way to human passion. It's measured in results. How many of your ancient civilizations have solved the problems we've tackled in our short time among the stars? The silence that followed was electric with tension. Sarah knew she had probably just destroyed any chance humanity had of gaining council membership, but she found she didn't care. She was tired of apologizing for human excellence. Queen Viroleth raised one hand, and the chamber fell completely silent. Ambassador Chun raises a challenging question. Perhaps it is time to examine not just what humanity brings to the galaxy, but what the galaxy has failed to accomplish in their absence. Sarah blinked in surprise. That wasn't the response she had expected. The Void Plague, the Queen continued thoughtfully, has indeed resisted all attempts at treatment for 5 millennia. The Dark Matter pirates have operated with impunity despite the best efforts of our combined fleets. The energy crisis grows worse each year despite the attention of our finest minds. Ambassador Telquan's form solidified with what appeared to be alarm. Your Majesty, surely you're not suggesting that humanity's brief existence gives them superior insight into these ancient problems? I'm suggesting, the Queen said slowly, that perhaps ancient problems require fresh perspectives. The definition of insanity, as I believe humans say, is doing the same thing repeatedly while expecting different results. Sarah felt a surge of hope. For the first time, someone in authority was seriously considering the possibility that humanity's youth might be an advantage rather than a liability. But, Your Majesty, General Crothtar protested, experience cannot be dismissed so easily. Wisdom comes with age. Does it? Queen Viroleth asked. Or does age sometimes bring rigid thinking? The Saurian Empire has existed for 10,000 years, yet your people still struggle with the same territorial disputes that plagued your ancestors. The Carathians have achieved mechanical perfection, yet your society remains static, unchanged for millennia. Perhaps stability is not the highest virtue. The chamber buzzed with uncomfortable murmurs. Sarah realized that the Queen was challenging the fundamental assumptions that govern galactic civilization. Human unpredictability, the Queen mused, may be precisely what this galaxy needs. For too long, we have prized order above progress, stability above innovation. We have become comfortable with problems that should have been solved long ago. Ambassador Thexnai's mechanical voice carried a note of desperation. Your Majesty, surely you don't mean to reward recklessness? Human actions consistently violate established protocols. Tell me, Queen Viroleth said, turning to face the Carathian delegation, how many of your protocols have actually solved the problems they were designed to address? How many of our ancient procedures have produced meaningful progress? The question hung in the air, unanswered. Sarah watched as delegates throughout the chamber shifted uncomfortably, perhaps for the first time being forced to confront the limitations of their own systems. The human approach to the Androxa pirate legion, the Queen continued, was certainly brutal by our standards. But it eliminated a threat that had plagued the galaxy for 3 centuries. Their intervention in the Kepler crisis saved millions of lives while our committees were still debating proper response procedures. Whisper of Dawn's ethereal form pulsed with agitation. But at what cost? If we abandon established order, we risk chaos. And if we cling too tightly to established order, the Queen replied, we risk stagnation. Perhaps the question we should be asking is not whether humanity deserves a place in galactic civilization, but whether galactic civilization deserves the contribution humanity can make. Sarah felt her breath catch. The alien queen was not just defending humanity. She was suggesting that the galaxy needed them more than they needed the galaxy. I have reviewed the data Ambassador Chun presented, Queen Viroleth said, moving to address the entire assembly. Human terraforming techniques could solve the housing crisis in the Outer Rim. Their medical innovations could finally defeat the Void Plague. Their military strategies could eliminate the pirate threat once and for all. If we're willing to pay the price in disruption to our established ways, General Crothtar said grimly. Perhaps, the Queen said, her scales shifting to a brilliant gold that indicated profound decision. Disruption is exactly what we need. She turned to face Sarah directly, and the weight of her ancient gaze was almost overwhelming. Ambassador Chun, I have one final question for your species. Sarah straightened, sensing that this moment would define humanity's future among the stars. If granted full membership in the Galactic Council, would humanity commit to working within our established systems, even when your instincts tell you to act independently? The question was a trap, and Sarah knew it. Answer yes, and she would be promising to abandon the very qualities that made humanity valuable. Answer no, and she would be confirming every suspicion about human unreliability. Your Majesty, Sarah said carefully, humanity would commit to working toward the goals of galactic civilization. But we would reserve the right to pursue those goals through whatever means prove most effective, even if those means challenge established procedures. A collective intake of breath echoed through the chamber. Sarah had essentially told the most powerful beings in the galaxy that humanity would not be bound by their rules if those rules proved ineffective. You would make yourselves the judges of when our procedures are inadequate. Ambassador Telquan asked, their form crackling with indignation. We would make ourselves accountable for results, Sarah replied. If our methods fail, we accept the consequences. But if your methods fail, we won't stand by watching people suffer for the sake of protocol. The chamber fell into the deepest silence Sarah had yet experienced. She could feel the weight of 23 civilizations considering her words. Some faces showed shock, others anger, and a few what might have been admiration. Queen Viroleth was motionless for long moments, her multiple eyes fixed on Sarah with an intensity that seemed to peer into her very soul. Finally, the alien ruler spoke. In 5,000 years of galactic civilization, no species has ever demanded the right to ignore our authority as a condition of membership. Sarah felt her heart sink. She had overplayed her hand, demanded too much. Humanity would be rejected, and it would be her fault, which, Queen Viroleth continued, may explain why so many of our ancient problems remain unsolved. Sarah blinked, uncertain she had heard correctly. The Queen rose from her throne once more, her full height dominating the chamber. The Galactic Council will now vote on humanity's application for membership. But first, I wish to address a fundamental question that this debate has raised. She paused, scanning the assembled delegates with all 6 eyes. Are we a council of civilizations committed to progress and the welfare of all galactic citizens? Or are we a bureaucracy more concerned with preserving our own authority than with solving the problems we were created to address? The question cut through the chamber like a blade. Sarah realized that humanity's application had become something much larger, a referendum on the entire structure of galactic government. If we reject humanity because they threaten our comfortable procedures, we declare ourselves a closed system, more interested in stability than in growth. If we accept them despite their challenges to our authority, we declare ourselves open to change and improvement. General Crothtar stood slowly. Your Majesty, with respect, some systems exist because they work. Order is not the enemy of progress. No, the Queen agreed, but blind adherence to order can be. Tell me, General, has the Saurian Empire made any significant technological advancement in the past 1,000 years? The reptilian leader's silence was answer enough. Ambassador Telquan, the Queen continued, has the ethereal collective developed any new philosophical insights in the past millennium, or do you continue to recycle the same ancient wisdom? Again, silence. The truth, Queen Varaleth said, her voice carrying across the vast chamber, is that most of us stopped growing long ago. We achieved comfort and called it wisdom. We developed procedures and call them progress. Humanity forces us to confront the possibility that we have been mistaking stagnation for stability. Sarah watched in amazement as the alien queen essentially dismantled the arguments against human membership by questioning the very foundations of galactic civilization. Your Majesty, Whisper of Dawn said hesitantly, surely you're not suggesting we abandon everything we have built? I'm suggesting we remember why we built it, the Queen replied. The Galactic Council exists to promote peace, prosperity, and progress among all species. If our methods no longer serve those goals, perhaps it's time to consider new approaches. The chamber buzzed with agitated conversation as delegates tried to process this fundamental challenge to their worldview. Sarah realized that regardless of how the vote went, this moment had already changed galactic civilization forever. The question before us, Queen Varaleth announced, is simple. Do we have the courage to accept partners who will challenge us to be better than we are? Or do we prefer the comfort of associates who will never question our methods? She gestured towards Sarah. Humanity offers us a choice. We can reject them and continue our slow decline into irrelevance, solving no problems and making no progress. Or we can accept them and embrace the chaos that comes with growth. The Queen's scales shifted to a deep crimson that Sarah's briefings had told her indicated final decision. I call for an immediate vote on humanity's application for full membership in the Galactic Council. As the voting process began, Sarah felt the weight of history settling on her shoulders. Win or lose, this moment would be remembered as the day galactic civilization chose between comfort and growth, between order and progress. The fate of not just humanity, but the entire galaxy hung in the balance. The voting chamber reconfigured itself as delegates took their positions. Ancient crystalline pedestals rose from the floor, each one attuned to the unique biological signatures of different species. The technology was older than human civilization, designed to ensure that every vote was authentic and could not be influenced or coerced. Sarah stood in the center of the chamber, feeling like a defendant awaiting judgment. The weight of 23 civilizations' opinions pressed down on her as delegates began their deliberations. Some species voted individually, while others consulted in complex group dynamics that humans barely understood. The Carathians were the first to cast their ballot. Ambassador Thexnai approached his crystalline pedestal with mechanical precision, his chrome exoskeleton reflecting the bioluminescent glow of the chamber walls. As his hand touched the voting crystal, it flared a brilliant red, rejection. Sarah had expected this, but it still stung. The Carathians had made their opposition to human membership clear from the beginning. The Valians followed, Whisper of Dawn's ethereal form drifting to their voting station. The crystal pulsed with uncertain light for several moments before settling on red. Another rejection. General Crothtar's massive form approached the Saurian pedestal with deliberate steps. His reptilian features showed no emotion as he placed his clawed hand on the crystal. Red again. Sarah felt her hope beginning to fade. Three of the most influential species in the galaxy had voted against humanity. Even if every other species voted in their favor, the opposition of these major powers would make human membership largely symbolic. But then something unexpected happened. The Aquarian delegate, a being Sarah had barely noticed during the proceedings, approached their pedestal. The crystal flared brilliant blue approval. The Aquarian Republic, announced the delegate in a voice like flowing water, believes that stagnant pools breed only decay. Fresh currents bring life. A murmur of surprise rippled through the chamber. The Aquarians were known for their conservative voting patterns, and their support for humanity was genuinely shocking. The Crystalline Confederation voted next. Their representative, a being of living mineral that communicated through harmonic vibrations, touched their pedestal with what appeared to be careful consideration. Blue. New harmonies create beautiful music. The crystalline beings sang, their voice like chiming bells. Discord is necessary for growth. Sarah felt a spark of hope returning. If some of the moderate species were willing to support humanity, perhaps the vote wasn't lost after all. The fungal collective approached next, their composite organism rippling with internal debate. Their pedestal remained dark for nearly a full minute as the various components of their consciousness argued among themselves. Finally, it flared blue. Growth requires disruption of established patterns, they said in their chorus of voices. Humanity offers necessary catalysts for change. The pattern continued as more moderate species cast their votes. Some chose rejection, but a surprising number were voting in favor of human membership. Sarah began to realize that Queen Violetha's speech had affected the delegates more deeply than she had initially thought. The tension in the chamber was becoming unbearable. Each vote brought humanity closer to either acceptance or rejection, but the final tally remained unclear. Sarah could see delegates watching the vote count with growing amazement. This was clearly not going as anyone had expected. Then, the ethereal collective approached their pedestal. Ambassador Telquan's barely visible form flickered with what appeared to be uncertainty. As one of the eldest species in the galaxy, their vote carried enormous symbolic weight. Telquan's hand, or what served as a hand in their dimension-spanning anatomy, touched the crystal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the crystal began to pulse with alternating colors, red and blue, as if the ethereal collective was profoundly divided. The ethereal collective, Telquan began, their voice carrying unusual hesitation, finds itself torn between the wisdom of ages and the necessity of change. The crystal continued its uncertain pulsing. We have existed for 30 million years, Telquan continued. In that time, we have seen countless species rise and fall. We have watched civilizations achieve great heights only to collapse into barbarism. We have learned to value stability above all else. Sarah felt her heart sinking. It sounded like the ethereals were preparing to vote against humanity. But, Telquan said, and the word carried the weight of eons, we have also watched ourselves become increasingly irrelevant to galactic affairs. Our wisdom, accumulated over millions of years, seems unable to address the challenges facing modern civilization. The crystal's pulsing began to slow, colors becoming more distinct. Perhaps, Telquan said slowly, wisdom without action is merely sophisticated ignorance. Perhaps it is time for the old to step aside and allow the young to try their methods. The crystal flared blue, so brightly that several delegates had to shield their eyes. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. If the ethereal collective, the most ancient civilization in the galaxy, was supporting human membership, it changed everything. More votes followed. The Hive Mind Collective, the Silicon Valley Republic, the Photonic Entities, each species casting their ballot with increasing drama as the implications of the ethereal vote sank in. Sarah lost track of the count as more votes came in. Some species that had seemed supportive ended up voting against humanity, while others that had appeared hostile surprised everyone with their approval. The final tally was becoming impossible to predict. Finally, only one vote remained. Queen Viroleth herself approached the royal pedestal, her serpentine form moving with ceremonial grace. As the ruler of the Zephyrian Empire and the current head of the Galactic Council, her vote would not only count toward the final tally, but would set the tone for humanity's future relationship with galactic civilization. The Queen's scaled hand touched the crystal, and immediately it began to glow. But instead of red or blue, it pulsed with brilliant gold, a color Sarah had never seen from the voting crystals before. "The Zephyrian Empire," Queen Viroleth announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber, "casts its vote for humanity's full membership in the Galactic Council, with one condition." Sarah felt her pulse racing. What condition could the Queen be adding at this crucial moment? "Humanity will be granted membership on a probationary basis," the Queen continued. "They will have full voting rights and access to all Council resources, but their membership will be reviewed annually for the first decade. If their methods prove destructive to galactic stability, their membership can be revoked." The compromise was brilliant, Sarah realized. It gave humanity the opportunity to prove themselves while providing reassurance to species concerned about human unpredictability. A holographic display materialized above the chamber, showing the final vote tally. Sarah stared at the numbers in disbelief. Approval: 14 species rejection, 9 species abstention. 1 species humanity had won membership by a margin of 5 votes. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices as delegates reacted to the historic decision. Some showed excitement, others cleared dismay, and many appeared to be in shock at the outcome. Queen Viroleth raised multiple arms for silence. "The Galactic Council has spoken. Humanity is hereby granted full membership, subject to the conditions outlined. Ambassador Chun, do you accept these terms on behalf of your species?" Sarah felt tears threatening to fill her eyes. After days of argument and uncertainty, humanity had finally been accepted into the galactic community. "On behalf of all humanity," she said, her voice carrying more emotion than diplomatic protocol usually allowed, "I accept these terms gratefully." Then, let it be recorded, the Queen announced that on this day, the youngest species in the galaxy became the newest member of our ancient council. May they bring the same energy and innovation to their membership that they brought to their application. As the formal proceedings concluded, delegates began approaching Sarah with reactions ranging from congratulations to thinly veiled warnings about human behavior. But what struck her most was the number of species representatives who seemed genuinely excited about working with humanity. "Ambassador Chun," came a melodic voice behind her. She turned to find one of the harmonic collective representatives, a being of pure, crystallized sound. "My people are eager to collaborate on terraforming projects. We believe human innovations could revolutionize our approach." Similar conversations continued throughout the evening as Sarah found herself at the center of what felt like a galactic networking session. Species that had been skeptical about human membership were now curious about potential partnerships and exchanges. But the most significant conversation came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Telquan approached her as the chamber was finally emptying. "Ambassador Chin," the ancient being said, their ethereal form more solid than Sarah had ever seen it, "my people would like to make a proposition." "I'm listening," Sarah replied, still somewhat in shock from the day's events. "The ethereal collective has spent 30 million years accumulating knowledge and wisdom. We understand the fundamental structures of reality in ways that most species cannot comprehend. But we have, as your queen astutely observed, become paralyzed by our own understanding." Sarah nodded, not sure where this was leading. "We would like to propose a formal partnership," Telquan continued. "Ethereal wisdom combined with human ingenuity. Our understanding of what is possible, guided by your instinct for what is necessary." The implications were staggering. The ethereal collective was the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, their technology and knowledge beyond human comprehension. A partnership with them could accelerate human development by millennia. What would such a partnership involve? Sarah asked carefully. joint research projects addressing the galaxy's most persistent problems: the void plague, the energy crisis, the spatial anomalies in the outer rim. Problems that require both ancient wisdom and fresh approaches. Sarah felt excitement building. This was exactly the kind of opportunity that could justify the faith the galaxy had placed in humanity. "We would be honored," she said. "But I should warn you, humans have a tendency to challenge established assumptions. We might question methods you've used for millions of years." Telquan's form flickered with what might have been amusement. "Ambassador Chun, that is precisely what we're counting on." As the last delegates filtered out of the chamber, Sarah found herself alone with Queen Viroleth. The massive alien ruler remained coiled on her throne, but her scales had shifted to a warm golden hue that suggested satisfaction. "Your Majesty," Sarah said, approaching the throne with appropriate respect, "I wanted to thank you personally. Without your support, humanity would never have gained membership." "Do not thank me yet, Ambassador Chun," the Queen replied, her multiple eyes focusing on Sarah with uncomfortable intensity. "I have taken an enormous gamble on your species. If humanity proves worthy of the faith I have shown, I will be remembered as a visionary leader. If they prove destructive, I will be remembered as the Queen who destabilized galactic civilization." The weight of that responsibility settled on Sarah's shoulders like a physical burden. "Your Majesty, I promise you that humanity will prove worthy of this opportunity." "Promises are easy to make," the Queen said softly. "Living up to them is another matter entirely. Your species now has access to technology that could make you the most powerful civilization in the galaxy. The question is whether you will use that power responsibly." Sarah thought about the history of humanity, their wars, their struggles, their tendency to let ambition override wisdom. But she also thought about their capacity for growth, their ability to learn from mistakes, their fundamental drive to improve not just themselves, but the world around them. "Your Majesty," she said finally, "humanity isn't perfect. We make mistakes. We act impulsively. We sometimes choose speed over caution. But we also learn from our errors. We adapt quickly to new situations, and we never stop trying to do better." Queen Viroleth was silent for long moments, her ancient gaze seeming to weigh Sarah's words against possibilities only she could perceive. "Time will tell," the Queen said finally. "But I find myself optimistic. Your species has already forced us to question assumptions we have held for millennia. Perhaps that alone justifies the risk we have taken." As Sarah left the throne room that night, she carried with her the weight of an entire species' future. Humanity had been given a chance to prove themselves on the galactic stage, but with that opportunity came enormous responsibility. Looking out through the transparent walls of the diplomatic station at the field of stars beyond, Sarah realized that this was just the beginning. Humanity's real test would come not in grand debates or formal proceedings, but in the daily work of building relationships, solving problems, and proving that their unique approach to challenges could benefit not just themselves, but the entire galaxy. The hardest part was yet to come. 6 months after humanity's acceptance into the Galactic Council, Ambassador Sarah Chun stood in the emergency session chamber, watching what might be the end of everything she had worked to achieve. The crisis had developed with frightening speed, and now every species in the galaxy was questioning whether humanity's membership had been a catastrophic mistake. The void plague had returned. For 5,000 years, the mysterious disease had appeared sporadically throughout the galaxy, killing millions before vanishing as mysteriously as it had appeared. It targeted consciousness itself, leaving victims alive but empty, their minds simply gone. No cure had ever been found, no treatment had ever worked, and no pattern to its appearances had ever been discerned. This time, it had struck the agricultural world of Kepler Prime, the same planet where human relief efforts had saved millions just 2 years earlier. Within days, entire continents had fallen silent as the plague swept through the population with unprecedented speed and virulence. The difference this time was that humanity was there. The reports are confirmed. General Martinez announced from the holographic display at the center of the chamber. His weathered face showed the strain of the past week's desperate communications with the affected system. The human research team on Kepler Prime has made direct contact with infected individuals. They're still alive, still conscious. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. For 5 millennia, Void Plague victims had been essentially dead, their consciousness completely absent. The idea that anyone could remain aware while infected was revolutionary. "This is impossible," declared Ambassador Thexnai, his mechanical voice carrying more emotion than Sarah had ever heard from Carathian. "Our finest scientists have studied this plague for thousands of years. Consciousness cannot survive infection. Yet our researchers report otherwise," Sarah said, standing to address the assembly. Dr. Elizabeth Warren and her team have not only maintained contact with infected patients, but have begun to understand the mechanism of the plague's effects. Queen Viraleth leaned forward on her throne, her scales shifting to deep purple with concern. "Explain these findings, Ambassador Chun. How is this possible?" Sarah activated her own holographic display, showing brain scans and neural activity charts that would have been incomprehensible to most species just decades earlier. Human neuroscience had advanced rapidly since joining the galactic community, combining human innovation with alien knowledge. "The Void Plague doesn't destroy consciousness," Sarah explained. "It isolates it. The infection creates neural barriers that prevent the conscious mind from controlling the body or communicating with the outside world. The victims are aware, but trapped inside their own minds." The implications hit the chamber like a physical wave. Whisper of Dawn's ethereal form flickered with distress. "You mean that for 5,000 years, plague victims have been conscious, but helpless, aware, but unable to communicate their awareness?" "That appears to be the case," Sarah confirmed grimly. The horror of this revelation was visible across species. For millennia, civilizations have been declaring plague victims dead and disposing of their bodies while the victims remained aware and trapped inside unresponsive forms. General Crothtar's reptilian roar echoed off the chamber walls. "This is why humans should never have been granted membership. Your reckless research methods have uncovered truths that were better left hidden." "Better left hidden?" Sarah shot back, her diplomatic composure finally cracking. "Better to continue murdering conscious beings because we're too afraid to challenge our assumptions. You don't understand the implications." General Crothtar snapped. "If this knowledge spreads, every species will have to confront the possibility that they've been committing mass murder for centuries. The psychological damage could destroy entire civilizations." Sarah stared at the massive reptilian leader, finally understanding the depth of resistance she was facing. This wasn't about scientific methodology or human recklessness. This was about species-wide guilt and the terror of confronting past mistakes. "So you would prefer to continue being ignorant?" she asked quietly. "Continue declaring conscious beings dead because it's more convenient than admitting we were wrong?" The chamber fell into uncomfortable silence. Sarah could see the conflict playing out on alien faces across the assembly. The struggle between desire for knowledge and fear of responsibility. Queen Viraleth spoke into the silence, her voice carrying the weight of ages. "What does this discovery mean for treatment possibilities?" Sarah felt a surge of gratitude toward the alien queen. While others were focused on the emotional implications, Viraleth was asking the crucial practical question. "Dr. Warren's team believes they can develop a treatment," Sarah reported. "The neural barriers created by the plague appear to be vulnerable to a specific combination of quantum frequency modulation and targeted nanosurgery. It's complex, but potentially effective." Ambassador Telquan's ethereal form solidified with what appeared to be intense concentration. "The technical requirements for such treatment would be enormous. The precision needed, the equipment costs, the training required. We're prepared to handle those challenges," Sarah said firmly. Humanity has already begun developing the necessary technology and training medical teams. At what cost? Demanded General Crothtar. Your species has been in space for barely 2 centuries. You lack the resources for a galaxy-wide medical intervention. Sarah took a deep breath. This was the moment she had been dreading, when humanity's limitations would become impossible to ignore. You're right, she admitted. Humanity lacks the resources to address this crisis alone. We need help from every species represented in this chamber. We need your manufacturing capabilities, your distribution networks, your medical expertise. And in return? Asked Whisper of Dawn suspiciously. In return, we share everything we learn. Complete technological transfer, full training for your medical personnel, joint research programs to improve the treatment methods. The chamber buzzed with agitated conversation as delegates considered Sarah's proposal. She could see the calculations happening behind alien eyes. The cost of cooperation versus the potential benefits of a cure for one of the galaxy's most feared diseases. There's something else, Sarah said, and the chamber fell silent again. Dr. Warren's team has discovered that the Void Plague isn't a natural phenomenon. It's artificial. The silence that followed was absolute. Impossible brétait ambassadeur d'Exnay. Our analysis over millennia has shown. Your analysis was looking for natural causes, Sarah interrupted. Dr. Warren approached the problem differently. She looked for artificial signatures and found them. The Void Plague is a weapon. The implications crashed over the assembly like a tidal wave. If the plague was a weapon, then someone had been using it against galactic civilization for 5,000 years. Someone with technology advanced enough to remain undetected despite intensive investigation by the galaxy's finest minds. Queen Viroleth rose from her throne, her full height dominating the chamber. You're saying that an unknown entity has been conducting biological warfare against galactic civilization for 5 millennia? That's exactly what we're saying, Sarah confirmed. And we believe we've identified the source. She activated another holographic display, showing astronomical charts and energy signatures that had never been recorded before. The plague outbreaks follow a pattern, Sarah explained. Not a temporal pattern that our predecessors could detect, but a spatial one. Each outbreak occurs in systems that have recently experienced specific types of quantum disturbances. Disturbances that match the energy signature of interdimensional gateway technology. The chamber erupted in voices as delegates struggled to process this information. Interdimensional gateway technology was theoretical to most species, far beyond their current capabilities. You're suggesting that beings from another dimension have been attacking our reality? General Crothtar's voice carried a note of disbelief. We're suggesting that someone with interdimensional capabilities has been conducting systematic attacks on galactic civilization, Sarah corrected. Whether they're from another dimension or simply using interdimensional technology is unclear. Whisper of Dawn's form flickered rapidly with agitation. Even if this is true, what can we possibly do against opponents with such advanced technology? Sarah felt a grim smile cross her face. We can stop playing defense and start playing offense. She activated one final holographic display, showing technical specifications for devices that looked like nothing any species had ever built. Human engineers, working with technology shared by our new galactic partners, have developed interdimensional detection arrays. We can track the energy signatures of these attacks and trace them back to their source. The chamber was completely silent as delegates stared at the impossible technology floating before them. Furthermore, Sarah continued, we believe we could develop countermeasures. The same quantum frequency modulation that can cure plague victims can be weaponized to disrupt interdimensional gateways. Ambassador Telquan's ancient voice carried a note of awe. You're proposing to take the fight to beings whose technology surpasses our own by orders of magnitude. We're proposing to stop being victims, Sarah replied. For 5,000 years, galactic civilization has accepted the Void Plague as an inevitable catastrophe. We've developed procedures for dealing with outbreaks, protocols for quarantine, and methods for disposing of victims. But no one has ever tried to fight back. Queen Viroleth's scales had shifted to brilliant gold, indicating profound decision. What exactly are you asking of this council? Sarah knew this was the moment that would define not just humanity's future in the galaxy, but the future of galactic civilization itself. We're asking for a unified response to an existential threat, she said. Every species contributing their unique capabilities to a coordinated defense of our reality. The ethereal collective's dimensional research, the Carathian manufacturing capacity, the Zephyrian command and control systems, the Aquarian deep space detection networks, all working together to end this threat permanently. And who? General Krothtar asked grimly. Would coordinate such a massive undertaking? Who would have the authority to command resources from every species in the galaxy? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah realized that she was about to ask for something unprecedented in galactic history. Unified command authority across all member species. Humanity would coordinate the effort, she said quietly. Not because we claim superiority, but because we're the only species that has demonstrated the ability to find new solutions to old problems. The chamber exploded in angry voices. The audacity of a species barely 2 centuries in space claiming leadership of a galaxy-wide military operation was staggering to most delegates. But Queen Viroleth's voice cut through the chaos. Silence. The word echoed with such authority that even the most agitated delegates immediately fell quiet. The alien queen studied Sarah with all 6 eyes, her expression unreadable. Ambassador Chun, you're asking us to grant humanity unprecedented authority based on theories and technologies that have never been tested in actual combat. Your Majesty, Sarah replied, I'm asking you to choose between the certainty of continued victimization and the possibility of fighting back, between accepting defeat and reaching for victory. The queen was silent for long moments, her scales shifting through colors that indicated deep contemplation. Finally, she spoke. Throughout this crisis, one fact has become clear to me. For 5,000 years, the greatest minds in galactic civilization have failed to solve the Void Plague. In 6 months, humanity has not only explained it, but developed potential countermeasures. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the assembled delegates. Perhaps the time has come to admit that our traditional approaches have failed. Perhaps the time has come to try something new. Queen Viroleth's scales shifted to decision gold as she prepared to speak the words that would change galactic civilization forever. I hereby propose emergency authorization for humanity to coordinate galactic defense against the interdimensional threat. All council members will contribute resources and capabilities as determined necessary by human command authority. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, slowly, Ambassador Telquan approached their voting crystal. The ethereal collective, they announced, has existed for 30 million years by avoiding unnecessary risks. But some risks are more necessary than others. The crystal flared blue. One by one, other species followed. Not all of them. The vote was closer than Sarah had hoped, but enough. When the final tally was displayed, humanity had been granted emergency command authority by a margin of just 3 votes. As delegates began filing out to prepare for the coordinated response, Queen Viroleth approached Sarah. Ambassador Chun, the alien queen, said quietly, I have just gambled the future of galactic civilization on the belief that humanity can succeed where everyone else has failed. Sarah felt the weight of an entire galaxy settling on her shoulders. Your Majesty, I promise we won't let you down. The queen's scales shifted to a color Sarah had never seen before, deep silver with threads of gold. 6 months ago, when I voted for humanity's membership, I said one sentence that silenced this chamber. The queen said thoughtfully, Today, you have spoken words that may save or damn us all. She paused, studying Sarah with ancient eyes. For the sake of every conscious being in this galaxy, I hope your confidence is justified. As Sarah watched the alien queen glide away, She realized that humanity's real test was just beginning. They had convinced the galaxy to let them try their methods, but now they had to prove that those methods could actually work. The fate of consciousness itself hung in the balance.